Welcome to the Thai Sustainability Summit 2021 showcase, Araku Coffee, from tribal India to Paris, with Mr. Manoj Kumar, co-founder of Araku Coffee, in conversation with Mr. Suresh Raju. Mr. Suresh Raju is a partner at Jupiter Alternate Investment Fund and the co-chair of the Thai Sustainability Summit 2021. He has guided us through this summit, and he believes that entrepreneurship is to listen to your inner voice against the outside noise and to materialize your vision into reality.
Welcome all. Welcome to all the delegates who are participating in the Thai Sustainability Summit. We are looking forward to having a wonderful conference here. The topic of this session, Araku Coffee from tribal India to Paris. What a story. Looking forward to it. Welcome Manoj. Look forward to having a wonderful conversation with you. Just to give you a little bit of background, Araku is a tribal area in Andhra Pradesh, and it is about 30 kilometers away from the nearest town. It is caught in poverty. It is stuck with a lot of issues like Naxalite insurgency over the years and is in a very difficult terrain. From this tribal area, Araku Coffee has created a global brand, opened cafes in Paris and Bangalore, and has helped eradicate poverty in 1,000 villages, yeah, making tribal people lakpatis. The average per capita income in Araku Valley is 2 to 4 times that of the national average of India, which is a very phenomenal outcome. Very impressive, and I'm so keen to listen to Manoj talk about it. Before we do that, I just want to introduce Manoj. I'll start by saying Manoj is named by Financial Times London as one of the top 25 people to watch out for in India. He is a Robert McNamara Fellow of the World Bank, and he's a fellow and moderator of the Aspen Institute, Colorado, and he serves on the board of various social impact organizations, and he's the CSR advisor to the Mahindra Group. 22 years with Nandi. He's the CEO of Nandi Foundation. Amazing career. Thank you very much for joining us today and taking the time out. I would love to hear the story. How did it start? What motivated you? Yeah, I'm sure everybody is looking forward to this.
First of all, thank you, Suresh. It's just a pleasure to know that a network like TAI thought of showcasing this incredible story of how tribals in the Eastern Ghats of India found a niche for themselves in global market, and how they fought climate change, how they fought poverty. To showcase that as something that TAI wanted to share with everyone is something that on behalf of the tribal communities and all of us, I want to express deep gratitude, because it just shows your commitment. You had a million choices today, and that you chose to listen to the story of tribals is truly humbling. So thank you for that. Thank you to the entire TAI network for doing this. As far as the story is concerned, I'll definitely try to make it as brief and interesting as possible, because to say 22 years story in 22 minutes or whatever is going to be tough. So I'll make it interactive. Yeah. But the quick story is, I want you to go to Araku region, not today, 22 years earlier. Yeah. And if you go there, this is approximately, between 3,000 to 4,000 feet above sea level. It's a 3-hour road drive from Visakhapatnam, or Vizag as it's called in Andhra Pradesh, southern state of India. But what was tough at that time is that it was more famous for the Naxal movement there, unfortunately. For the international audience, the Naxal movement was more a Maoist, violent insurgency group that ideologically believed in using arms and violence to create a new form of development, and that had made that place almost impossible for anyone to work. I remember the first time in 2000 when I was visiting that region to explore what we can do there. People told me 2 conditions. Yeah. One is, don't wear a white shirt, and don't go in a white vehicle, which was either a Qualis or a Tata Safari or any of those vehicles, because then you were assumed to be on a government trip, okay, and they would have a landmine that will blow up.
This is the old white ambassador car.
Yes, or any of this was not allowed at that time.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of background I got. What is amazing is this region is incredibly a fascinating place for ecology as well as anthropology. It's inhabited by close to 35 major tribes. In that region, which is part of the Eastern Ghats, only tribals can live. We have close to 500,000 population living. They speak tribal dialects. They don't have a unified language. And you find that they were actually forest dwellers. You know, they're not even farmers. The challenge was that they were so cut off, so marginalized, that this became a perfect hideout for the Naxal movement. And infant mortality rate, more importantly, maternal mortality rate was one of the worst in the world. This place had almost nobody going to school. It's in this background that Nandi Foundation, where I just had become the first founding CEO, took up this idea of transforming that region. The idea was, as entrepreneurs, you will know, you are forgiven if you attempted one big venture where the world will forgive you if you fail. So this was one such idea, that you tried transforming such a place, and if it failed, people will forgive you. That was my brief, that you are free to fail and you will be forgiven for that. So that region, what I realized is you cannot even have a conversation with them because you don't know the language. And as anthropologically tribes, they don't speak much. We are a completely gregarious lot. So I remember having hours and hours of conversations with different communities using 2 levels of translators. And after 4-5 hours, the only answer I got from them was they just shook their head and they went up and went. Little did I know that most of them were already stoned, or some of them were drunk, or they were disinterested. So it's a very satire comical situation where you go and speak. But over time, repeatedly going there, living there, talking to them, finding interpreters who can speak little bit of the dialect but more of Telugu. Then some places people who can speak Odia, which is the neighboring state's language, and then use that for interpretation. We started work on maternal health care because everybody was worried that in this region, giving childbirth was a most likely a dying proposition
For the women.
for the woman. And some of the reasons were as sad as they used a rusted arrow to cut the umbilical cord. So they created septicemia. Then we found out that nobody went to school. And when I started talking to them on the idea of a school, because I found out that people wanted children to be looked after. They said that if the idea of school was to put children in a closed room with no windows and doors, they said that was not school. They said the idea of school was to be in a forest under a tree. If that was possible, then we can do. So those were our initial schools. We created schools under trees. We then got a lot of support from the cities and created midwifery program for the tribal women, started slowly transferring them from arrows to proper delivery kits. And once the maternal mortality rate came down and children became our friends, slowly after 3-4 years, we started reducing the trust deficit.
Okay.
And I want to spare a thought here to say, we have had situations where they told me that couple of decades ago, even before I came, the situation was so remote that people would come from, as they called India, to their region 20 years before I went, and trade like 10 bags of rice for 1 kilo of salt.
My God.
Because it was not known to them.
It
Was a barter economy there, and they did not understand this trade-off. Of course, there has been very, very illustrious young IAS officers who often had this most challenging and memorable postings as what they call the project officer of ITDA, Integrated Tribal Development Agency post, who were actually the pioneers who started some developmental work there against all odds and risks. Some of them went on to become additional chief secretary rank and retired, and I, in my journey, met many of them, learned stories from them. But by and large, there was this thing of huge trust deficit.
So you had to teach them coffee? You have to teach them coffee, or is the
Yes,
coffee naturally available?
Very good question. So coffee was grown by the British as early as 1900
Okay.
in this region.
Okay.
But when they left, the coffee estates were all handed over to government,
Okay.
and the tribals never knew how to grow coffee, and they never knew it. So our idea was there was an initiative between the government and the coffee board attempting to give coffee saplings to these tribals. But you know, it takes 8 years for coffee to survive, and you need a shade tree. And the tribals cleverly waited for the shade tree, in this case was silver oak tree, to grow. When it was 5 years, they cut the shade tree and sold it. And they said they won't wait for the coffee. So the coffee program attempted at failed. And this was the only thing. So it was almost like taking over, in entrepreneurial terms, a loss-making company which had no assets, very poor skilled labor, and no vision and passion, but only history of lot of money sunk. That was available. So that's what I took. I had to then inspire the community that let's do coffee together, and we might create history. That
So
was the dream.
how did you transform them? What did you do as your first, second, third initiative to actually make Araku Coffee their primary, livelihood? Right? It looks like they were growing rice and paddy and all of that. So how did you convert them?
So again, this had so many layers of successes and failures, but you know, history is always said by recounting only the success things. So I can easily tell you that what really worked was scale. We ramped up fast. We did not experiment with 100 or 200. We first year itself, we went and worked in 100 villages, identified 1,000 to 2,000 families, and by second year we ramped up to 5,000. So the moment you ramp up to different such large scale, it starts creating a positive belief that something is going to happen.
So you address health first, then you address the education for them.
Then we
and
came to
then the
livelihood. But when I spoke to livelihoods, there were two things that came out. One is they said they want cash in hand. Then they said they wanted their forest back because the forest was depleting for them. So for me, the challenge was, how do I give them cash? And I said, for that, the only way we can do cash is if every one of you start growing coffee. I said, each family should have a coffee estate.
So it's such a longer term project. So your vision is like a 20-25 year vision here.
Yes,
It
of
takes-
which
it takes
8 years is minimum time to take money, get money.
Interesting. So you kind of get them to, I guess, reforest and do plantation for the coffee.
True.
Wait them. During that phase, how did you provide livelihood to them while you're making them wait for 8 years?
Very good question. So our challenge involved, first of all, making them believe that staying with us for 8 years works. And to tell these, I remember literally going through villages and creating village level, society level groups. So we created farmer groups like a cooperative. As we hear about the farmer cooperatives, including India celebrated Amul brand, we sort of got inspired by such stories, and in each village we created a coffee group. So these villagers came together and they all federated at the apex level as the coffee cooperative. And it is today the world's largest organic coffee cooperative with tens of thousands of members. But to all of them, our initial years discussions were, we started working with them on growing few other vegetables and millets and arranging for their marketing, number one. Number two, we even linked them in an organized manner with the NREGA schemes, as it is called, the National Rural Employment Guarantee Assurance schemes, and gave them livelihood where it was not possible. And third, we started getting lucky because from day one we had planted pepper, which is the pepper vine which is in the shade tree. And the pepper started giving yield before coffee. And they already had other forest produce incomes, including tamarind. So all of these, with little value addition, we started giving them direct markets, and they started recognizing the fact that this is good. Then every time they had to plant an estate of fruits, we created mechanisms by which they got wage income, and our wage income was at least 2 to 3 times higher than what was the minimum wage. So because this was knowledge-based wage income. So a series of cash coming in
Yeah.
into the kitty,
Yeah.
started making them feel that in 5, 6 years we should be getting bigger amounts.
So when was the first year at which point you could actually, market the coffee? When did that start? The branding and the marketing of the coffee. When was the first crop?
So to explain that, I should tell you that when the coffee started coming in is when I started learning about coffee. Till such time, I didn't know this was such a complicated crop. You realize that if you want to get value for coffee, within 12 hours of plucking the cherry, you have to process it.
Okay.
If you don't process it within 12 hours, then the coffee's value will be much lower.
Okay.
I mean, it's like we're talking the value addition is 300%.
So this is like a perishable food item.
Technically, because then the cherry
From a,
buds.
from a quality perspective.
Yes,
Yeah, okay,
absolutely.
okay.
So then I realized I need to have a processing unit. So we set up a coffee processing unit and it had to be state of the art. Once we did it, I discovered that these people plucked cherry, which was yellow, green, and red together. They would just go and pluck. If for those of you who have never been to a coffee estate to pluck coffee, let me tell you that when you go to a bush, you realize that in the same stem, you have red, yellow, and green. You have to pluck only the red cherries. I mean, that's how the phrase cherry picking came into English language.
Okay.
But if you try to ask any farmer, or if you go to Brazil or Vietnam or any of the places, industrial cherry picking done is just they pluck everything and they use a color sorter to separate. Whereas here, I had to make them to pluck only the red cherry and then bring them, then get it processed. And the logistics of doing it was so expensive that it would have made coffee unviable for me. So from day one, I went around the world and got coffee experts to come and be part of this project.
Okay.
So I had the world's best minds in coffee from Japan, France, South Korea, Switzerland join us to come and grade the coffee as early as 2007. And 2007, 2008, they unleashed a package of measures to make it globally top-notch. It needed so many steps to be done at each stage if it had to be the world's best coffee. One example is to dry all of them in a raised platform, not on the ground.
Okay.
Another example is only to get red cherries. Another example is each to have the same sugar content. Fourth is to dry it under sun, not on an industrial blower.
Yeah.
Like this, some 21 steps.
Okay.
And they said, because you have tribals and because they are passionate and because there are small estates, you can do all of this.
Okay.
So try it. By 2010, from scoring 50 out of 100 for the coffee quality when they cupped, and all of these were judges of the Oscars of coffee.
Okay.
You know, the equivalent of the Oscars of coffee is called the Cup of Excellence. And these were the jury who would cup that. They started giving me initially 50 out of 100 for these samples and I would die. It was like having a children who wouldn't make the grade. Then they went to 60, then they went to 70. And by 2010, they started hitting 80.
Okay.
And when they hit 80 out of 100, they said it's by far the best coffee in India.
Wonderful.
I said,
Amazing.
are you serious?
And
This beats
all
the
of
coffee
that,
from
all
Kurg?
of that improvement is coming from the process improvement of capturing the quality of it early on with all the steps that you just talked about.
50% is that.
Okay.
50% was agriculture. I didn't know this.
Oh,
How you treat the soil,
okay.
how much sunshine falls on it,
Okay.
how the soil has enough biomass, how you prune it on time, that agriculture mattered. I had luckily a New Zealander who lived 50 years in India, started his life in Sri Aurobindo Ashram called David Hogg, who knew all of these techniques and who agreed to be part of my journey and since 2009 has been with me. He transformed the knowledge of this agricultural method into the estates through a team of 400 tribal youth. So once that knowledge was gone, I learned that a coffee that is grown by me in this plot and you in the next village can be so different. So we started like wine,
Yeah.
calling agronomists from France and experts who worked on in Bordeaux and Burgundy. Bordeaux, Burgundy wine experts came here, agronomists came, and they started mapping terroirs.
Yeah.
And so Araku got mapped into different terroirs. And we then classified different coffee to have same taste profile. So then by 2011-12, when we started sending it for sample cupping to international buyers, they said this is absolutely rock star stuff. We haven't sampled anything like this, and that consistency they loved. They started promising 10x, 20x price.
What's the current rating?
So today, I don't have a single farmer in Araku region
Okay.
growing coffee below 85 out of 100.
85.
And
Wow.
we normally have an average of 87, 88. Some of them touch 90 and 92. You don't get more than 93 for a coffee anywhere at this rate.
What's the best in the world rated as?
So there could be small lots which may
Pockets,
get
yeah.
93, 94. We have done 92.5,
So you are the
93.
premium luxury.
So
of
we are
coffee.
like, yes, we are the best compliment I got is a Frenchman said you are the Birkin bags of Hermes equivalent in terms of coffee, and I think it's the tribals' effort and passion. What it showed is if you have that kind of passion and eye for detail to give, each bush and each stem they knew. Each family looked after an estate. But for them, it was transforming themselves from being labeled as Naxal informers and sympathizers and harassed by various people to being known as a coffee estate owner. To be known as the creators of a coffee brand from India. That transformation is what they hold in pride.
Yeah. So when you have earned their trust, you have taken care of their health, then you're kind of educating their kids, then your livelihood is being changed. How did you train them and transform them on techniques? It must be an expensive and long process for your team to spend time there and do this. How did you manage that? I understand you've broken them into smaller groups and you have help people, self-help and so on. Is there a process that an NGO or somebody who's working with rural or tribal villages that could use what you have learned to replicate, Manoj?
So, very good question. I think it's important to say that I have to transform 100,000 lives. I don't have a 1,000 member team.
Yeah.
I have only 5 members in my team who live there. And then these few experts who come and go. But the idea was from day one, create your frontline human resource to be the farmers and their children themselves. And from them, through series of trainings, identify who can be the community level leaders, who can be the community level trainers, make them your HR team.
Okay.
Use them, and whenever they give training or whenever they collect data, compensate them in cash.
Very smart.
So from beginning, the knowledge was transferred to them.
Yeah.
And they owned the model. If I had to expand, I took this team and said, let's go and expand. So the trust deficit reduction was quicker. And the knowledge just got more and more staying there only. So that way, my unit cost of transformation became lesser and lesser with scale.
Anything in terms of resistance from the Naxal insurgency over the years, or is it an issue still, or is that something that was the past and you kind of have a much better control today?
So it won't be an exaggeration if I tell you that I can't on record say that some of the Naxals are now farmers, but definitely some of the sympathizers of the Naxal movement are very much my farmers.
Okay.
I had the embarrassment once taking a bunch of buyers from Brooklyn to a farmer's place, and he had a huge gun with him.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm just keeping it for old habit's sake. So I won't say more about it, but the fact that the entire community, if the community is empowered and community is looked after, the Naxal movement, that much ideology is still very strong in them, they don't disturb you. So every community member has communicated every day what's happening to the Naxal movement, and they know what we are doing. So they are actually fully supportive of this transformation.
Okay, wonderful. So in some essence, you've kind of controlled the entire production or growing of coffee. You're procuring it directly from them, and you're also maintaining the supply chain to get it to Paris or Bangalore and kind of... so what does the coffee cost in Paris, your Araku coffee?
Yeah,
How much per a cup?
No, so I think it's important to highlight that we come in this 1% category, or maybe 0.1% in terms of quality. Broadly, the industry is called specialty coffee, where you score on an average 85 plus. That's the understanding. So in that niche, it's unfair to compare it with any other coffee. So we have two categories of it. When we sell it as a retail as we do in Louis Vuitton's grocery store in Paris, or in we sell it in Galerie Lafayette, or in our own flagship store, it may be costing you a kilo 10,000 or 12,000 rupees, which is actually just a premium price coffee price, which is maybe 2 to 3 times the next best competitor out there in Paris. So, which is tough, but people who discern and understand coffee, very happy to pay for it. In fact, I have still received compliments from coffee aficionados who say you're selling this quality coffee very cheap.
Okay.
Please price it higher. So if you take it to my partner in Seoul, who sells the coffee through his cafe, there is a queue outside his cafe. He posts in Facebook by 6 a.m. before he opens. And an espresso single shot can set your wallet aside by $8.
Wow.
So those who understand this coffee think it's probably one of the finest in the planet in terms of quality. Unfortunately, it will take a while for us Indians who are used to filter coffee, who are used to drinking it with milk and sugar, to appreciate this. We will take a while. Till such time, I think I will have to plow back the profit to the tribals from connoisseurs in Kyoto in Japan, or Seoul in Korea, or in Lamarai in Paris. That's the tragedy. I mean, but that's what it is. But what this shows is India has the potential to be a global leader of high quality food in the agricultural space. What India did with IT and software, India can do with agriculture and food, because we have the terroir. We have the sunlight, we have the soil and terrain variety, we have labor, we have the largest small farmer community in the planet, and we have the sunshine, not to forget, and the rain. So this is an area waiting to happen. If Araku stands for A, then there is up to Z to exploit for India.
Wonderful. That's great, Manoj. So excited to kind of hear that story there.
Thank you.
I saw a TED Talk, right, which covered Araku Coffee. And Mr. Shah Rukh Khan was the moderator, kind of talking to you. What was the key message from that session? For our audience, I just want to summarize in a minute or two, if possible.
Yeah, I can tell you that TED trains you well, and you have to talk better. So while this Thai talk is the best I can give today, I will encourage you to see the TED Talk at Aaraku Coffee if you Google, because Shah Rukh makes it even more exciting. But to me, the key message that we did there was, I went from the Araku transformation to what is the problem with Indian agriculture. What needs to be done on Indian agriculture, and is there lessons to learn from Araku Coffee? That was the theme of the TED Talk, and I encourage that. It's a longer discussion to see it. But for me, the excitement was I used that opportunity to bring one of the tribal women farmers to come with her son and be with Shah Rukh and gift him a coffee sapling, and tell that this story is theirs, not mine or anybody else. And that sort of gave a special flavor to TED itself. Because it's truly there. And if you come with me to Araku or go now and talk to the farmers, they actually own the project and the venture. And they believe it's their pride of place. They found their place in the sun. And I think that's what TED did. TED was a tribute to them.
I'm sure it made Shah Rukh Khan's day.
I mean, he never had ever a tribal woman ask him for a date for a dinner.
Wonderful.
So it was fun.
So listening to all of this story, and kind of understanding that you can actually create a global brand in food from our agricultural products for the global audience and the global consumers, I'm just excited to understand how the development finance worked behind the scenes to make this happen. You're thinking in terms of 20 years to make this project work, right? How did you finance it in the early years? Did you raise donations? Did you raise capital for Nandi Foundation? How much of it went? Is it a break even after the 5th year, 7th year? What happened and how did you fund it? Because a lot of us in the audience and myself, we're all interested in doing something good. But how do you finance it?
I would have been disappointed if you didn't ask this question, because Suresh being Suresh and Thai network, full of entrepreneurship, would always want to find out how the capital came. So, frankly, the most of these initial years, it hardly cost.
Yeah.
Because I told you that there was no human resource costs that were high, and we managed with, really, really scarce resources in the initial years. It would be the equivalent of, not even bootstrap. It was just garage with pocket money, if you please. That's how we started it. Uh, we, the change happened when we started wanting to create a forest.
Okay.
And when we wanted better quality coffee saplings, we wanted coffee nurseries, we wanted better quality pepper wine.
Yeah.
That's when I realized I had to raise money for these trees.
Wow.
And that time, I figured out that there was a whole global craze going on, especially in Europe,
Yeah.
on how to sequester carbon. Because the only thing that was available is if you make carbon sinks,
Yeah.
you can go and buy carbon credit. Or the best people did was offset carbon. From there, we invented with a bunch of enlightened corporates in Europe, especially France. And I can be honest in naming that the leaders were people, my friends from Danone, Group Danone. But then they also went on to companies like Hermes, Schneider Electric,
Yeah.
Firmenich in Switzerland, and a whole bunch of European companies came together. Like we have in India, the CSR,
Yeah.
they started creating something for sustainability. So they created a fund,
Okay.
which is now called the Livelihoods Fund.
Okay.
And that fund gave money to entrepreneurs like me and said, with this money,
Yeah.
you go and plant trees, whatever estates you want.
Okay.
We get the carbon sequestered as our carbon credits in return.
And this is the project that kind of led to 30 million trees?
Exactly. So today we have 30 million trees.
Yeah.
It comes predominantly from this unique carbon financing model, which is now catching up. I can tell you that now I'm in a position to replicate Araku in 10 more places because this fund has multiplied to 50x, and not just one, multiple players are in the market now. Only one Indian company, the Mahindra Group, has been from beginning consistently giving us money to plant trees. In fact, they every year give me money to plant 1 million trees in Araku. So that has been a consistent, what I call Indian equity that I offered to say that I have somebody giving. The rest came from the Livelihoods Fund. And today I have inquiries from United States, from Europe and Singapore of big corporations telling me, if you can replicate Araku, we'll fund it. All we need in return, no questions asked.
Yeah.
You do what you want with it, just the carbon credit.
Yeah. So it says here that you have restored 40,000 hectares of
That's right.
forest land.
That's right. That's close to 1 lakh of acres has been brought back. And it's not just the tree. What's important is people think that you can recreate by just planting trees. You need to have grass. You need to have fodder.
Yeah.
You need to have shrubs.
Yeah.
The habitat has to be also diverse. The trees have to be diverse.
Yeah.
You have to develop certain swamps.
Yeah.
It's not that everywhere you create, it's not like sweat the asset we say in corporate world. It's about really having the diversity in a manner that you recreate the forest, make it harmonious for livelihoods, and then make it really sustainable. But then carbon comes. Even if I shift from chemical agriculture to growing something organically, you still sequester carbon. So carbon sequestration can happen in so many ways.
Different ways.
In fact, this Araku model showed that the way we produce food, that can fight alone climate change.
Wow. That can make the biggest impact.
Impact.
So what does it take, Manoj? Let's get to the numbers, right? You said 40,000 hectares of forest land has been created. If you have capital, can you replicate this 100x
Absolutely.
in the next 10 years?
Absolutely.
So what is holding us back? Is it the capital? Is it the people? Is it the process?
Only thing holding back is networks like TIE going and telling the world there is a project to be funded. That's all. Literally, it's purely the lack of awareness.
Yeah.
I mean, it really sort of saddens me. We are pretty bad at this, I think, as social entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
We just bury ourselves in the work.
Yeah.
We don't get to talk about it, but really that's what it takes. So we are trying to, so the Mahindra Group has asked a similar question. Now we are replicating something like this in Himachal
Himachal Pradesh.
with fruit trees.
Wow.
Then we are looking at Uttar Pradesh, border of Nepal, for example. Then we are trying to see it in other parts of India like Vidarbha, which is farmer suicide prone area, unfortunately. So we hope to replicate it. We also have started helping the Kerala government and the Odisha government to replicate specifically coffee in Koraput and Wayanad. The respective governments approached us and we are trying to do. But frankly, every network, including TIE, including all corporates, can relook at the way we can create forest systems, create new food production systems, and thereby replicate Araku and fight climate change.
So I see here that the Food System Vision Prize by Rockefeller Foundation is given to you. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? I'm so excited to hear what is it about. Does it mean that I can't eat Hyderabadi biryani anymore, or what is it that you have as vision for us and everybody else in the audience globally here? What should we eat? What is your food vision?
Thank you. I mean, to the contrary, the Rockefeller Foundation's Food Vision Award actually guarantees that Hyderabadis will never miss out of their biryani.
Oh, good to hear.
If we don't have the right food vision, we will probably lose it out. So what we are concerned is, so first of all, Rockefeller decided to have this award and select 10 different visionaries from around the world and give food vision awards. Because they believe that what is a food vision in Russia won't be the food vision in India. Because the climate conditions vary. What is in Peru won't be what is in Europe. So they selected geographically 10 winners who are visionaries. We are very humbled that the Arakunomics, as we call it, based on the Araku story, got selected as one of them. And we combined what we can do for cities, what we can do for rural, and what we can do for tribal to work it. It basically has only 3 points. We call it the PQR index. And we think that every time you eat food, biryani or otherwise, if you ask this PQR question, it will tell you whether this is the right way to eat food. So what does P stand for? I'm going to be a little provocative here, and you would think that this guy is really getting to the limits, but that's really what won the global award.
That's Manoj.
P stands for every time you eat food, I want you to ask this question. The food that you are eating, who made this food? That is, which farmer? And did that farmer make profit? How happy will you be eating biryani, knowing that all the farmers who produced all the ingredients in it are loss making forever? So we need to have a movement where farmers make profits. And I'm sorry, minimum support price is not the solution. You need to make them entrepreneurs. If we can make every farmer an entrepreneur in this country, we will be the richest sustainable country in the planet for the next 500 years. So that's the mission of P. Q. Q is, we are the only commodity in the planet which should not be bought by weight and paid for by weight is food, but we do it that way. You don't buy an apple based on its nutrition. You buy it based on its kilo and how much distance is traveled. You don't hire people in your company by their weight, do you? You assess them for what they stand for, what they have. Same way, please buy food and price it based on nutrition. So we say that every food should declare the quality of nutrition in it when you price it, and that knowledge should be there. Vaguely called, it's the minimum starting point is clean labeling. R is to say that every food that is produced should not be at the cost of damage to the planet. If you produced food by damaging the planet, I'm telling you, you tell your child when you feed her that this food made has ensured that the planet is damaged. Have it. I'm telling you, a child won't eat. So you conceal this information. R stands for make the food production in a manner that it is regenerative for the planet. Don't make it terminal. If you do PQR and every food you eat has that awareness for you, then we will create a better planet. I am waiting for that to be the valuation principle for food. Rather than anything else. Arakunomists proposed that treatise, and Rockefeller thinks that's the vision for the world, which necessitates you to promote local food. Why should you eat avocados from Spain? Can somebody tell me this? I don't understand. It's 6,000 rupees a kilo.
Yeah.
You get it for 600 rupees if you grow it from Kodaikanal. I mean, why can't we do this? Why this fancy to wear? I'm okay if you want to wear fanciful commodities, but not food that you eat. There is a link with terroir, there's a link with the soil, there is a link with the farmer. The solution is not minimum support price, the solution rests with us consumers. We have to ask these questions and change them. So that's what the vision is all about. That's what Araku demonstrated.
It's a transformative model, Manoj. I'm so excited to hear about PQR. I'm going to do more research on this.
Thank you.
Guys, profit, quality of nutrition that you're getting, and the regeneration of the food. Those are the three things.
Of the planet.
Of the planet. Right? Regeneration of the food capability of the planet, right, is what we should focus on to make, our planet more sustainable. I've got a question from the audience here, which is saying that, is this Araku economics, Arakunomics, right, as you call it?
That's right.
Is this replicatable in rural areas, or is this primarily for tribal areas? Have you done work in non-tribal rural areas?
Yeah. So Arakunomics is a framework which we hope to do everywhere. So we are already doing before rural, let me tell you, in cities.
Okay.
We are creating like software parks or SEZs. We are creating food clusters outside cities. We already have one in Delhi. We are just started in Hyderabad and Bangalore.
Okay.
We will have outside every metro of a similar park where farmers come together. They grow food as per this plan and supply vegetables here. So as they say in Hyderabad, inshallah, in few months' time, you will have Arakunomics food produced outskirts of Hyderabad land in your house,
And
which
the
will clear the PQR.
And that entire, to farm to fork kind of
Will
thing
actually happen.
will all be owned. The entire supply chain will be owned
Yes,
by
us. That's the whole idea. So we call that the urban farms network.
Okay.
Then we have the rural one, which we are targeting in clusters. So we have it in already happening in Varda, in the Vidarbha region, because we felt that if in Varda we can transform, which is unfortunately famous for farmer suicides,
Yeah.
if we can show PQR happen there, Arakunomics happen there, then we will be able to show. So it's already happening. You will be getting turmeric from Varda, red gram from Varda, onions from Varda, and hopefully we'll be exporting all. Last month we exported a container of Araku pepper to Finland because it's the highest quality and it fetched us the highest price. So we will show that tomorrow we will be exporting Varda. When I say tomorrow, this time metaphorically, Varda turmeric all over the world because it has one of the best regenerative properties that you can think of. So we can, and we have shown it's replicable. Arakunomics can be a way of re-looking at food production, which is linked to planet, livelihood, and consumer nutrition.
So I hear the long lines for your Bangalore cafe, right?
That's true. That's
so
true.
how do we get a spot there? Do you want to talk a little bit about your Bangalore cafe and what your, I guess, motivation is to bring it to Bangalore, and what do you want to leave as a footprint there? Right, you have a message, I'm sure.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I totally agree. Thank you for asking that because it would have been very embarrassing to advertise this cafe, although it's on behalf of tribals. But I should tell you that everyone, and I'm sure from the Thai audience, all of you love the city of Bangalore. Ideally, I recommend it second to Hyderabad. But once you go there, I want to tell you, check out Aaraku Cafe at 12th Main Indira Nagar. You will be absolutely delighted to know that we've redefined how food should be served, how should food be prepared, and how a cafe should look like.
Yeah.
I'm extremely grateful to all the people of Bangalore, the way they have thronged, the way they have adopted it as theirs, and the way they have taken it to the streets and spread the message. We are humbled.
Yeah.
What we have done is everything in the cafe is organic and produced regeneratively. Everything that you eat every ingredient can be traced to the farmer. The food is almost gourmet Michelin star standard. The price is cheaper than Starbucks, if you please. I'm sorry to bring brands here. But the quality of coffee is the same, world class. Okay. And the service, we redefine service. Yeah. You know, it's not about servitude. It's about extraordinary knowledge of everyone that serves you the coffee and the food. And it's completely designed. We had a New York designer, Jorge come and combine his skills with an Indian designer, Shonen Trahan. The combination created a New York, Stockholm combination, if you look at it, but very Indian in its spirit.
Yeah.
So I encourage you to come there. We hope that this becomes a billboard of experience for Aaraku Cafe and our agricultural strength. We hope to open it now in Bombay, hopefully Hyderabad soon, but we are also looking at taking it global, because this is the story of what tribals can do. This is the story of what India can do. This is the spirit of India.
Indian brands can do globally.
This is our attempt is to show that there is indeed an Indian brand that can beat and compete the best in the world globally on the retail space, especially food and agriculture. That's what we hope to do. So please do check out
Sure.
Aaraku Cafe.
So I've got one question from the audience here. We're running out of time here. It's asking if you, I guess, look at Araku economics and you kind of implement that. Is the yield per acre or yield per hectare compromised, and because of which you have to get the high price? You can't do a mass-produced production of agriculture. So in that context, right, is yield important here?
Yes. So I have to tell you that if you do regenerative agriculture and if you capture the yield, first of all, I'll urge you to measure not agriculture in short terms of one season.
Okay.
I will assure you that you need to look at agriculture in a 10-year framework.
Okay.
If you look at it a 10-year framework, we will be far more in yield than any other form of agriculture.
Okay.
So the regenerative, as per yield, we grow better yield even season to season for the 10-year period and cumulative than any other format. And we will be much lesser in input cost. So the model, the assumption that organic reduces quality may be true partially, especially when you do the quick shift from chemical to organic. But as you work on a region where it has been made regenerative and carbon rich, from first crop itself, your yield is higher.
Amazing, Manoj. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it. I do want to give your email address, ceo@nandi.org. Any questions, feedback? This is a very, very powerful story. You're talking about changing agriculture. You're talking about changing reforestation. You're talking about doing this at 1 lakh acres per project and doing it 100 times across India. So these are transformative ideas. I'm really glad that you're able to spend some time with us at Thai Sustainability Summit. Lot to learn from you and replicate your model, right? I think you deserve all the awards that you get, and we are really looking forward, as per Financial Times London, to be the top 25 people to watch out from India, right? Thank you, Manoj. Really appreciate your time. I hope everybody found it very useful. I'm really intrigued by the PQR model. I'm going to see if my daughter is going to buy that and kind of implement it. Very excited, and thank you for the new framework on how to scale up. Thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed the session.
Thank you.